I'm Emma, 28, and at last Sunday's family brunch, my mother looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're lucky we even include you. Pity goes a long way." After I quietly mentioned I couldn't afford to split the $400 bill equally among 6 people. What she didn't know was that I'd been secretly funding her mortgage payments for 3 years while she thought I was a financial disaster. And when I stood up and announced I was canceling the automatic transfers that had been keeping their house from foreclosure, her smirk disappeared faster than their fake family unity. Think you can predict how quickly family dynamics change when the money stops flowing? Hit that like button if you believe respect should be earned rather than bought. Subscribe for more shocking family financial revelations, and let's dive into how sometimes the person everyone pities is actually the one keeping everyone afloat. Growing up in the Martinez household meant understanding exactly where I stood in the family hierarchy, firmly at the bottom, treated as the cautionary tale that made my siblings look better by comparison. While my younger brother Carlos and sister Isabella achieved the kind of conventional success that made my parents glow with pride, I had apparently chosen a path that brought nothing but disappointment and financial strain to our family. Carlos was everything my parents had dreamed their son would become: a successful investment banker with a six-figure salary, a beautiful fiancée from a wealthy family, and the kind of social connections that enhanced our family's reputation in their upper-middle-class social circle. Carlos just closed another major deal, my mother would announce proudly during family gatherings, usually ensuring I was present to hear about his latest professional triumph. His bonus this quarter was more than most people make in a year. We're so proud of how he's built such an impressive career. Isabella had followed an equally prestigious path, earning her law degree from a top university before joining a prominent firm where she specialized in corporate litigation. Her engagement to another successful attorney had created exactly the kind of power couple that made my parents feel their child-rearing had been vindicated. Isabella's firm just made her a junior partner, my father would add during these family success updates. She's the youngest attorney in the firm's history to achieve that level of recognition. Her wedding is going to be absolutely beautiful. David's family has such wonderful connections. Then there was me, Emma, the family disappointment whose life choices had apparently brought nothing but shame and financial burden to parents who deserved better from their oldest child. After college, instead of pursuing a traditional career path that would provide stability and social recognition, I had started a small nonprofit organization focused on providing educational resources to underprivileged children. The work was meaningful and important to me, but it came with a salary that barely covered my basic living expenses and certainly didn't impress anyone at dinner parties. Emma works for a charity. My mother would explain to friends and relatives, her tone suggesting that while my work was probably well-intentioned, it wasn't the kind of career choice that reflected well on our family's values of financial responsibility and professional achievement. She's always been more interested in helping others than building her own success, my father would add, making my commitment to social justice sound like a personality flaw rather than a deliberate choice about how to spend my professional life. The constant comparison with my siblings' financial success had created a family dynamic where I was treated as the child who needed help and guidance rather than someone whose work contributed meaningfully to society. Every family gathering included subtle reminders that my career choices had disappointed parents who'd invested in my education expecting better returns. "Emma, you know we support your charitable work," my mother would say with the tone of someone offering encouragement to a child with unrealistic dreams. "But you need to think about your long-term financial security. Nonprofit salaries won't allow you to buy a house, save for retirement, or support a family." The financial lectures were constant and condescending, treating my career as a phase I needed to outgrow rather than a genuine commitment to work that made a difference in children's lives. But the most painful aspect of their disappointment wasn't the constant financial advice. It was their assumption that my nonprofit salary made me dependent on family support and unable to contribute meaningfully to family expenses or activities. We understand that Emma can't always participate in family vacations or expensive dinners. My father would explain to relatives who wondered why I was often absent from family celebrations. Charity work doesn't provide the kind of income that allows for luxury spending, and we don't want to put financial pressure on someone who's already struggling. The characterization of my financial situation as struggling was based on their assumptions about nonprofit salaries rather than any actual knowledge of my income or financial management. They decided I was poor and treated me accordingly, without ever asking about my actual financial situation or understanding that nonprofit work could be both meaningful and financially sustainable. Family dinners consistently focused on Carlos's investment successes and Isabella's legal victories, while my nonprofit work was acknowledged briefly before conversations returned to careers that generated income impressive enough to warrant extended discussion. Emma's organization helped another 50 children this year. Someone might mention politely, "But Carlos, tell us about this new investment opportunity you mentioned." The dismissal of my professional achievements in favor of my siblings' financial success created a family dynamic where my value is measured solely through earning potential rather than social impact or personal fulfillment. What made this particularly frustrating was that my parents' assumptions about my financial situation were completely wrong. While they were treating me like a charity case who needed their support and patience, I was actually managing my finances more successfully than either of my supposedly high-achieving siblings. What my family didn't know, what I had carefully hidden from them for over 3 years, was that their financially struggling daughter was actually the one keeping their comfortable lifestyle afloat through secret financial support they had never suspected or acknowledged. The discovery of my parents' financial problems had happened by accident during a visit to their house when I overheard a tense phone conversation between my mother and someone from their mortgage company about missed payments and potential foreclosure proceedings. "We need more time," my mother had been saying, her voice carrying the desperation of someone facing the loss of their home. "My husband's consulting income has been irregular, and we've had some unexpected medical expenses that have affected our ability to make the full payments on schedule." After the call ended, I had gently asked if everything was okay, but my parents had quickly dismissed my concerns with the kind of protective explanations parents give to children they believe couldn't help with serious problems anyway. "Just some routine financial planning discussions," my father had said, clearly uncomfortable about revealing financial difficulties to the daughter they viewed as least capable of providing assistance. But over the following weeks, I had observed signs that suggested their financial situation was far more serious than they were admitting to anyone, including my siblings who would have been obvious sources of help given their supposedly superior earning power. Credit card statements left on kitchen counters showed balances that exceeded what middle-class families should carry. Bills were scattered around their home office in ways that suggested organizational stress rather than routine financial management. Most telling, they had begun making comments about cutting back on expenses and being more careful about discretionary spending. My father's consulting business, which had provided steady income for over a decade, had apparently lost several major clients during the economic uncertainty of the past few years. My mother's part-time work in real estate had also declined as the housing market had become more challenging for agents without established client bases. The combination of reduced income and accumulated debt had created a financial crisis that threatened the home they'd lived in for 20 years and the comfortable lifestyle that had been the foundation of their social identity and family pride. But instead of asking for help from Carlos or Isabella, whose impressive salaries would have made them obvious sources of family financial support, my parents had apparently decided to handle their problems privately rather than admitting difficulties to children they'd raised to believe were more successful than their struggling nonprofit daughter. That's when I made a decision that would change our family dynamics in ways none of them could have predicted. I was going to secretly solve their financial crisis while allowing them to maintain their pride and their assumptions about my own financial limitations. Using information I'd gathered about their mortgage situation, I contacted their lender and arranged to begin making supplemental payments that would bring their account current and prevent foreclosure proceedings. The payments were structured to appear as if they were coming from my parents' own resources, protecting both their privacy and their dignity. Over the following months, I had systematically addressed their most critical financial obligations: mortgage payments, credit card minimums, utility bills, and the medical expenses that had contributed to their cash flow crisis. The monthly amount I was contributing to their household expenses totaled nearly $3,000, money I could afford because my nonprofit work, contrary to their assumptions, actually paid quite well due to my administrative responsibilities and the organization's success in securing grants and donations. But the most careful aspect of my financial support was ensuring that it remained completely invisible to my parents and siblings. The mortgage payments appeared to be coming from my parents' own bank account through automatic transfers they assumed they had arranged. Credit card payments were made online in ways that looked like routine automatic billing. Utility payments were handled through systems that appeared to be managed by my parents themselves. For 3 years, I had been the primary reason my parents maintained their comfortable lifestyle, their beautiful home, and their ability to host the kind of family gatherings where they could continue celebrating Carlos and Isabella's success while treating me as the disappointing child who couldn't contribute to family activities. The irony was devastating. While they were treating me like a financial burden who needed their patience and support, I was actually subsidizing their lifestyle and preventing the loss of assets that would have destroyed their social standing and family pride. But the most painful aspect wasn't the financial sacrifice. It was sitting through family dinners where they discussed my siblings' impressive earning power while dismissing my work as financially insignificant, completely unaware that my struggling charity salary was keeping them housed and comfortable. The Sunday brunch that would finally expose 3 years of hidden financial support began like every other family gathering, with my parents proudly sharing updates about Carlos and Isabella's latest achievements while treating my presence as a charitable inclusion rather than genuine family celebration. Carlos just bought that beautiful condo downtown, my mother announced as we reviewed the brunch menu at an upscale restaurant that had become their preferred location for family gatherings. The building has a concierge, a gym, and the most incredible city views. We're so proud of how he's invested his success. Isabella's promotion came with a signing bonus that she's using to plan the most gorgeous wedding, my father added, ensuring that everyone at the table understood how financially successful my siblings had become. The venue alone costs more than most people's annual salary, but they can afford to celebrate appropriately. I was listening to these updates with the usual mixture of genuine happiness for my siblings and frustration at the implicit comparison with my own supposedly disappointing financial situation. The restaurant they'd chosen for our family brunch was expensive, the kind of place where entrees cost $35 and bottomless mimosas added another $25 per person. I had learned to navigate these situations by ordering carefully and hoping the bill would be split proportionally rather than equally among all attendees. "Emma, you're being unusually quiet," my mother observed during one of the conversations about Carlos's investment portfolio. "Don't you have any updates about your charity work?" The question was asked with the tone of someone making polite conversation with a child whose activities weren't particularly interesting, but deserved acknowledgement for participation. "My organization just received a major federal grant that will allow us to expand our programming to 3 additional schools," I replied, sharing news that represented months of work and would help hundreds more children access educational resources. "That's nice, dear," my mother responded, already turning her attention back to more interesting topics. "Carlos, Tell us about this new investment strategy you mentioned. The dismissal of my professional achievement in favor of Carlos's financial activities was typical of our family dynamics, but it stung particularly deeply given what I knew about who was actually providing financial support to whom. The breaking point came when the server brought our check, a total of nearly $400 for 6 people who'd enjoyed an extensive brunch with multiple rounds of drinks. The amount was significant, but not unusual for our family gatherings at upscale restaurants. "We'll split this 6 ways," my father announced, as had become routine for family meals. "That's about $65 each, plus tip." I felt my stomach clench as I realized that $65 plus tip would represent nearly $80, money I could afford, but money that would be particularly painful given that I'd just transferred $3,000 to cover my parents' mortgage payment the previous week. "Actually," I said carefully, "would it be possible to split the bill based on what each person ordered? I only had the fruit plate and coffee." The request was reasonable and polite, but the reaction from my family was immediate and hostile. "Emma, we always split family meals equally," my mother said with obvious irritation. "That's how families handle shared expenses." "But I ordered significantly less than everyone else," I explained, trying to maintain courtesy while advocating for basic fairness. "My portion of the bill was probably around $20. That's when my mother made the comment that would finally push me beyond my tolerance for family disrespect and financial hypocrisy. "Emma, you're lucky we even include you in family gatherings," she said with a smirk that made her contempt unmistakable. "Pity goes a long way, but you could at least show some gratitude by not being difficult about money every time we try to have a nice family meal." The casual cruelty of suggesting that my inclusion in family activities was pity rather than love, combined with the accusation that I was being difficult about money while I was secretly funding their mortgage, was the moment my patience with their ignorance and ingratitude finally snapped. "You know what, Mom?" I said, standing up from the brunch table with my phone in hand. "Let me take care of something right now that might clarify exactly who should be grateful to whom in this family." I opened my banking app and began canceling the automatic transfers that had been keeping my parents' financial lives stable for the past 3 years. "What are you doing?" my father asked, clearly confused by my sudden change in demeanor and my focus on my phone rather than the bill discussion. "I'm canceling the $3,000 monthly transfer that's been paying your mortgage for the past 3 years, I replied clearly, ensuring that everyone at the table could hear exactly what I was revealing. "I'm also canceling the credit card payments, the utility payments, and the supplemental income that's been keeping you in this house and maintaining this lifestyle you think I'm too poor to participate in." The silence that followed was complete and devastating as my parents processed what I'd just revealed about the true source of their financial stability. The silence at our family brunch table was deafening as my parents stared at me with expressions that cycled through disbelief, shock, and growing horror as they processed the magnitude of what I'd just revealed about our family's actual financial dynamics. "What do you mean you've been paying our mortgage?" my mother whispered, her voice barely audible as she began to grasp that her assumptions about my financial situation had been catastrophically wrong. "For the past 3 years, I've been automatically transferring $3,000 every month to cover your mortgage payment, plus additional money for credit cards, utilities, and other expenses," I explained with the calm precision of someone who'd been managing complex financial arrangements while being treated like a family charity case. "I set up the transfers to look like they were coming from your own accounts to protect your dignity, but the money has been coming from my nonprofit salary that you've spent 3 years dismissing as insufficient for adult responsibilities." My father was pulling out his phone, apparently trying to access their bank records to verify what sounded impossible, but was beginning to feel inevitable. "Emma, that's impossible," he said, his voice shaking as he navigated through their online banking. "We would have known if you were. We would have seen." Dad, you would have seen monthly deposits that maintained your account balance and prevented overdrafts, I replied. But you assumed those deposits were coming from your own business income or mom's real estate commissions, not from your disappointing daughter's charity work. Carlos and Isabella were listening to this revelation with obvious shock, clearly realizing that their financially struggling sister had actually been supporting their parents while they'd been enjoying their own success without contributing to family financial stability. Emma, if you've been helping mom and dad financially, why didn't you tell us? Isabella asked. We could have contributed to family expenses if we'd known they needed help. Because they never asked for help, I replied, looking directly at my parents. They were too proud to admit financial difficulties to the children they'd raised to be successful, and too convinced of my financial limitations to consider that I might be capable of providing assistance. My mother was crying now, whether from embarrassment, gratitude, or the realization of how cruelly she'd been treating someone who'd been literally keeping her housed and comfortable. Emma, we had no idea, she said through her tears. We assumed your salary. You assumed my nonprofit salary made me poor because you never bothered to ask about my actual income or financial situation, I interrupted. You decided I was a struggling charity case and treated me accordingly, while I was actually managing my finances better than anyone else in this family. The restaurant around us was beginning to notice our family drama, with other diners glancing toward our table as voices rose and emotions became visible. Ma'am, is everything all right? Our server asked diplomatically, clearly concerned about the disruption but professional enough to check on our situation. Everything's fine, I replied, pulling out my credit card. I'll take care of the entire bill. Emma, no, my father protested. Let us split it like we planned. With what money, Dad? I asked pointedly. The money I've been transferring to keep your accounts current? The mortgage payment that's due next week that you can no longer cover? The credit card minimums that are going to bounce without my automatic payments. The questions were forcing them to confront the reality that their comfortable lifestyle had been entirely dependent on support from the daughter they'd been treating as too poor to split restaurant bills equally. How long do we have before? My mother began, apparently realizing that canceling my financial support would have immediate and devastating consequences for their housing and financial stability. Your mortgage payment is due in 8 days, I replied, consulting the calendar on my phone. Without my transfer, you'll be back in the foreclosure proceedings that I've been preventing for 3 years. Carlos was finally grasping the full scope of what had been revealed about our family's financial dynamics and his own ignorance about who actually needed support. Emma, I'm sorry, he said, his voice carrying genuine remorse. I had no idea you were supporting mom and dad. I should have been contributing to family expenses instead of assuming they were fine financially. Carlos, they never told any of us they were struggling, Isabella added, clearly feeling guilty about her own lack of contribution to family financial stability. If we'd known, we would have helped. But you didn't know because you never looked beyond your own success and their pride in your achievements, I replied, trying to help them understand that the problem went beyond simple lack of information. You assumed I was the family failure who needed patience and inclusion, while I was actually the one keeping everyone afloat. The revelation was destroying assumptions that had shaped our family dynamics for years, forcing everyone present to reconsider who contributed what to our family's stability and success. Emma, please don't cancel the transfers, my father pleaded. We can work this out as a family. We can arrange proper loan agreements, or Carlos and Isabella can start contributing. Dad, this isn't about money, I replied firmly. This is about respect. For 3 years, you've treated me like a charity case while I was literally subsidizing your lifestyle. You've dismissed my career, patronized me about financial responsibility, and just told me that including me in family gatherings was an act of pity. The summary of their treatment was hitting them with the full force of recognition that their cruelty had been directed towards someone who'd been quietly sacrificing to protect them from financial ruin. "You're right," my mother said quietly. "We've been terrible to you, and we don't deserve your help or your forgiveness. But Emma, please don't let our mistakes destroy our home and our family." The plea was genuine, but it was also exactly the moment when I had to decide whether family loyalty or personal dignity would determine how I responded to 3 years of disrespect and ingratitude. The conversation that followed my revelation transformed our family brunch from a routine gathering into a comprehensive reckoning with years of assumptions, disrespect, and financial ignorance that had shaped every interaction between us. "Emma, we need to understand how this happened," my father said, his voice carrying the tone of someone trying to process information that contradicted everything he believed about his family's financial dynamics. "How were you able to support us financially when we thought you were struggling?" "My nonprofit salary is actually quite competitive," I explained, deciding that honesty was necessary for any possibility of rebuilding family relationships. "As executive director, I earn $95,000 annually, plus performance bonuses based on our grant acquisition and program expansion." The figure was significantly higher than what my parents had assumed nonprofit work could provide, but it was also lower than Carlos's investment banking salary or Isabella's law firm income. "But that's not enough to support both your own expenses and ours," Isabella observed, clearly trying to understand the mathematics of my financial situation. "It is when you live within your means and manage money carefully," I replied. "I have a modest apartment, a reliable used car, and I budget carefully for everything. Unlike some people in this family, I don't spend money trying to impress others or maintain lifestyle inflation." The implicit criticism of their financial management was hitting Carlos and Isabella as they realized that their higher salaries hadn't translated into the kind of financial stability that allowed for supporting family members in crisis. "Emma, why didn't you ask us to help?" Carlos asked. "Isabella and I could have contributed to Mom and Dad's expenses if we'd known they needed support." "Because they didn't ask you for help either," I pointed out. "They were too proud to admit financial difficulties to anyone, and they assumed I couldn't help because nonprofit work doesn't generate impressive salaries." "But Carlos, would you have been able to contribute $3,000 monthly to family expenses?" Isabella asked her brother, apparently beginning to realize that high salaries didn't necessarily translate into available cash for family support. Carlos was quiet for a moment, clearly calculating his own financial obligations and discretionary income. "Honestly, probably not consistently," he admitted. "My condo payment, car loan, and investment commitments take up most of my income. I could help with emergencies, but not ongoing monthly support." Isabella nodded in agreement. "My student loans and wedding expenses have consumed most of my salary increases." I assumed Mom and Dad were financially stable because they never indicated otherwise. The conversation was revealing that my siblings' impressive salaries came with lifestyle expenses that limited their ability to provide family support, while my supposedly inadequate nonprofit salary had actually provided more flexibility for helping others. "So Emma has been the only one actually supporting this family financially," my mother observed, the realization clearly painful as she understood how wrong her assessment of her children's relative contributions had been. "While we've been treating her like the family disappointment who needed our patience," my father added, his voice heavy with recognition of how cruel their attitude had been. But the financial revelation was only part of what needed to be addressed. The deeper issue was the years of disrespect, dismissive comments, and treatment of my career as somehow less valuable than my siblings' more traditional professional success. "The money is one thing," I said, "but the disrespect is what really hurts. You've spent years implying that my work doesn't matter, that my career choices were disappointing, and that I should be grateful for family inclusion because I couldn't contribute meaningfully to family activities. We were wrong, my mother said simply. We made assumptions based on our own ignorance about nonprofit work and your financial situation. We should have asked about your life instead of making judgments about your choices. Mom, it goes deeper than assumptions about money, I replied. You've consistently valued Carlos and Isabella's success over my work helping children access education. You've treated earning potential as more important than social impact. The conversation was forcing them to confront not just their financial ignorance, but their broader values about what kinds of achievements deserved recognition and celebration. Emma's right, Isabella said, showing more insight than I'd expected. We've created a family dynamic where earning money is more respected than helping people. That's not the values Mom and Dad raised us with. Carlos was nodding in agreement. Emma's work is probably more important than anything I do in investment banking. She's literally changing children's lives while I'm just moving money around for people who already have plenty. The recognition from my siblings was meaningful, but the most important acknowledgement needed to come from my parents, who'd been the primary source of dismissive attitude and financial assumptions. Emma, we want to apologize not just for our ignorance about your financial situation, but for our failure to recognize and celebrate your career achievements, my father said with obvious sincerity. Your work is valuable and important, and we should have been proud of what you've accomplished instead of comparing you to your siblings. We also want to make proper arrangements for repaying the money you've contributed to our expenses, my mother added. This should be treated as a loan with appropriate terms, not an ongoing expectation that you'll subsidize our lifestyle. The apology was comprehensive and seemed genuine, but I needed to understand whether this represented real change in their attitudes or just reaction to the shocking revelation about money. I appreciate the apology, I replied, but I need to know that this isn't just embarrassment about being wrong about my financial situation. I need to know that you actually understand why your treatment of me has been hurtful and disrespectful. What happened next would determine whether our family relationships could be rebuilt on a foundation of mutual respect rather than the hierarchy of earning potential that had shaped our interactions for years. The weeks following our explosive family brunch became an intensive period of education, apology, and gradual rebuilding of relationships that had been damaged by years of assumptions, disrespect, and financial ignorance. My parents' first step was educating themselves about nonprofit work, grant funding, and the actual career prospects and earning potential in the social services sector. What they discovered challenged every assumption they'd made about my professional choices and financial situation. Emma, we had no idea that nonprofit executive positions could be financially competitive, my mother said during one of our first post-brunch conversations. We researched salary ranges for your position and realized that your income is actually quite impressive for someone your age in any sector. We also learned about the grant funding process and how complex and competitive it is to secure federal and foundation support, my father added. Your success in building your organization's budget and programs represents exactly the kind of achievement we should have been celebrating. The education process had included discussions with other nonprofit professionals, reading about social services careers, and attending one of my organization's fundraising events where they could observe the scope and impact of our work. Seeing your organization in action and meeting the families you serve helped us understand that your work is not just meaningful, it's essential, my mother told me after attending our annual fundraising gala. We're ashamed that we dismiss something so important as less valuable than traditional business success. But their most significant step was addressing the immediate financial crisis that my withdrawal of support had created. Rather than asking me to resume the transfers, they'd begun working with Carlos and Isabella to establish a family support system that distributed responsibility more appropriately. Carlos and I are each contributing $1,000 monthly to help mom and dad manage their expenses. Isabella informed me during a family meeting we'd arranged to discuss ongoing financial arrangements. We should have been doing this all along instead of letting you carry the entire burden. We're also working with a financial counselor to address the underlying spending and income issues that created the crisis, my father added. Emma's support allowed us to avoid confronting problems we should have been solving years ago. The financial counseling had revealed that my parents' money management skills hadn't adapted to their reduced income, and they'd been living beyond their means while assuming that their previous lifestyle was sustainable regardless of changing circumstances. We're downsizing the house and reducing expenses to match our actual income, my mother explained. We should have made these adjustments when Dad's consulting business declined instead of allowing Emma to subsidize unsustainable spending. But the most meaningful change was in how they discussed my career and achievements during family gatherings and conversations with extended family and friends. Emma's organization just expanded to serve 3 additional school districts, my father announced proudly during a recent family dinner, using the same tone of pride he'd previously reserved for Carlos's investment deals and Isabella's legal victories. She secured a $2.3 million federal grant through a competitive application process that required months of planning and coordination, my mother added, clearly having educated herself about the complexity and significance of grant funding success. The recognition of my professional achievements was gratifying, but the most important change was their genuine interest in my work and their questions about challenges, goals, and the day-to-day realities of nonprofit management. Emma, tell us about this new literacy program you're developing, Isabella would ask during family conversations, showing real curiosity about my work rather than polite obligation. How do you measure success in your field? Carlos would inquire, demonstrating understanding that nonprofit achievement involved metrics different from but equally valid as business profitability. My relationship with my siblings had evolved as they began to understand that our different career paths were all valuable contributions to society, and that family support should be based on mutual respect rather than earning potential. Emma, I'm grateful that you chose work that actually helps people, Carlos told me during one of our conversations. My investment banking makes money, but your education programs change lives. That's more important than anything I do. Isabella had become particularly supportive, using her legal skills to help my organization with contract reviews and compliance issues while expressing genuine admiration for social services work. Emma's career requires skills that my legal training never developed, she acknowledged. Managing programs, coordinating with multiple agencies, and working with families in crisis, those are complex abilities that deserve recognition and respect. But the most significant transformation was my parents' public acknowledgement of their mistakes and their genuine effort to repair relationships they damaged through years of dismissive attitude and financial assumptions. We owe Emma an apology that goes beyond this family, my mother announced during a recent gathering with extended family and friends. We spent years undervaluing her career and treating her achievements as less important than her siblings' financial success. We were wrong, and we want everyone to understand how proud we are of the work she does and the person she is. The public acknowledgement was meaningful because it addressed the social dimension of their disrespect and ensured that relatives and family friends understood that their previous dismissive comments about my career had been based on ignorance rather than accurate assessment. Emma's work represents the best of our family values, my father added during the same gathering. She's dedicated her career to helping children succeed educationally, and her professional achievements exceed anything we could have hoped for when she chose nonprofit work. The ongoing process of rebuilding our family relationships was gradual but genuine, based on mutual respect and understanding rather than the hierarchy of earning potential that had previously shaped our interactions. 1 year later, I'm sitting in my new office, Director of Regional Educational Services for a major foundation, a promotion that came with a significant salary increase and national recognition for my previous nonprofit work, preparing for a family dinner where the dynamics bear no resemblance to the toxic relationships that had characterized our interactions for years. The promotion had surprised my parents, who'd only recently learned that nonprofit careers could lead to prestigious positions with competitive compensation and significant professional influence. Emma's new position involves overseeing educational programs across 12 states with a budget of over $50 million. My mother explained proudly to friends during a recent celebration of my career advancement. She's become one of the youngest directors in her field and was recruited specifically because of her track record of program success and grant management. The recognition of my professional achievement was complete and genuine, reflecting their evolved understanding of nonprofit careers and the opportunities available to successful social services professionals. My parents had successfully stabilized their finances through the family support system Carlos and Isabella had established, combined with lifestyle adjustments that align their expenses with their actual income rather than their desired standard of living. We learned that financial stability requires living within your means regardless of what you think you should be able to afford. My father reflected during one of our regular family dinners. Emma's support allowed us to avoid confronting spending habits that were unsustainable and irresponsible. The financial counseling had also helped them develop better communication about money management and long-term planning, creating transparency that prevented future crises and eliminated the pride-driven secrecy that had contributed to their problems. We should have asked for help when we first started having difficulties, my mother acknowledged. Family members should support each other during challenges instead of pretending problems don't exist. Carlos and Isabella's ongoing contributions to family expenses had created a support system that distributed responsibility appropriately while allowing our parents to maintain dignity and independence. Supporting mom and dad financially has actually improved my own money management, Carlos observed during a recent family conversation. Knowing that I have family obligations has made me more careful about discretionary spending and lifestyle inflation. Isabella had similar experiences with her contribution to family support. Contributing to family expenses has been more meaningful than spending money on luxury items or expensive entertainment. It feels good to know that my legal career is helping maintain family stability. But the most significant change was in family conversations, which now focused on each person's work and achievements without the competitive hierarchy that had previously characterized our interactions. Emma's foundation work is expanding to include teacher training programs. My father would share with family friends, expressing the same pride in my career advancement that he'd always shown for Carlos and Isabella's success. Her expertise in educational program development has made her a sought-after consultant for other foundations and government agencies, my mother would add, demonstrating understanding of my field and genuine appreciation for my professional reputation. The recognition extended to social situations where they'd previously felt embarrassed about my career choices compared to my siblings' more traditional professional success. All three of our children have built impressive careers. My parents would tell people, treating our different paths as equally valuable rather than ranking them by earning potential or social prestige. My relationship with Carlos and Isabella had deepened as we developed mutual respect and understanding about our different contributions to both family stability and social welfare. Emma's work creates lasting change in children's lives, Carlos would tell people when discussing our family careers. My banking work moves money around, but her education programs provide opportunities that wouldn't exist otherwise. Isabella had become one of my strongest advocates, regularly referring legal colleagues to my foundation for pro bono work while promoting nonprofit careers as meaningful alternatives to traditional corporate paths. Emma's career combines professional success with social impact in ways that make my corporate litigation look purely mercenary, she would tell other attorneys. She's built expertise and leadership that benefit society rather than just generating profit. The most rewarding aspect of our transformed family relationships was the genuine interest everyone now showed in each other's work and achievements without comparison or competition. "How's the new teacher training program developing?" Isabella would ask during family dinners, showing real curiosity about my work rather than polite obligation. "What's the most challenging aspect of managing programs across multiple states?" Carlos would inquire, demonstrating understanding that nonprofit leadership involved complex coordination and strategic planning. My parents' transformation was most evident in how they spoke about success and achievement to their friends and social circle, emphasizing values and social contribution rather than focusing solely on earning potential. "We're proud that all our children chose careers that utilize their talents and contribute meaningfully to society," my mother would tell people, treating our different paths as reflecting personal strengths rather than comparative success. Emma's foundation work, Carlos's financial expertise, and Isabella's legal skills all serve important social functions, my father would add, demonstrating evolved understanding of professional value and social contribution. The most meaningful outcome was family gatherings where everyone's achievements were celebrated equally and financial discussions were based on transparency and mutual support rather than assumptions and hidden subsidies. "Emma, we want you to know that we understand now what real family support means," my mother said during our most recent family dinner. "It's not about pity or charity. It's about recognizing each person's contributions and ensuring that everyone feels valued and respected. Your financial support kept us afloat, but your patience with our ignorance and disrespect was even more generous," my father added. "We're grateful for both, and we're committed to being the kind of family that deserves your love and loyalty." The brunch incident that had exposed years of financial secrets and emotional disrespect had ultimately become the catalyst for building relationships based on mutual respect, understanding, and genuine appreciation for different types of success and contribution. "Thank you for not giving up on us," Isabella said during a recent sister conversation. "Your willingness to confront our behavior and educate us about your career created the family relationships we should have had all along." The most important lesson from our family's transformation was learning that respect should be given based on character and contribution rather than earned through meeting other people's expectations about success and achievement. Have you ever been financially supporting family members who treated you like a charity case or failure? Sometimes the people who benefit most from our generosity are also the ones who respect us least, especially when they make assumptions about our capabilities without understanding our actual situation. What would you have done in my situation when your mother said you were lucky to be included out of pity? Would you have revealed your financial support immediately, or would you have endured the disrespect longer? I'm curious about your thoughts on family dynamics, financial boundaries, and the balance between helping loved ones and demanding basic respect. The hardest part of this experience wasn't the financial sacrifice. It was years of family gatherings where my career was dismissed while I was secretly keeping everyone financially stable. Sometimes family members need dramatic revelations to understand that their assumptions about success, money, and worth are completely backwards. If this story resonates with you, please hit that like button and share your own experiences with family members who underestimated your financial capabilities or treated your career choices as disappointments. Have you ever had to choose between continuing financial support and demanding respect? Your stories help others facing similar situations. Don't forget to subscribe for more real-life family financial drama, hidden support systems, and the complex dynamics that happen when the family failure is actually keeping everyone afloat. Ring that notification bell for updates about family respect, financial boundaries, and learning to value contribution over traditional measures of success. Please share this video with anyone who needs to hear that your worth isn't determined by other people's understanding of your career or financial situation. Sometimes the most powerful response to disrespect is simply stopping the support that makes their comfortable lives possible. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, family relationships should be based on mutual respect and appreciation, not on assumptions about who needs help and who provides it. When people treat your generosity as obligation and your presence as charity, it's time to reevaluate what you're actually getting from those relationships. Until next time, keep believing in the value of your work regardless of family recognition, keep setting boundaries that protect your dignity, and keep hoping that the people who matter most will eventually understand your worth. Sometimes the best gift you can give disrespectful family members is the opportunity to appreciate you properly by experiencing life without your support.